reports are fueling the mystery around the death of Jeffrey Epstein. The Washington Post is reporting that new details on the millionaire's autopsy results. Epstein apparently had several broken neck bones, including the hyoid bone. It can be broken by suicide, but it's more commonly associated with murder by strangulation. The Post reports Epstein's official cause of death is still pending, however.
Well, this all comes as Epstein's accusers seek justice despite his death. Several are suing his estate and alleged accomplices. Mola Lenghi has the latest.
One of the alleged victims now suing Jeffrey Epstein's estate says 4 women helped him run his alleged underage sex trafficking operation, at least in part from right here, his roughly $77 million New York City townhouse. Now, Epstein may be gone, but the demand for justice is intensifying.
A good "I'm sorry" would have been good enough, because I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve to just not be a teenage girl anymore.
Michelle Licata says she did not want Jeffrey Epstein to die. She wanted him behind bars for allegedly sexually abusing her when she was around 16 years old.
I just wanted him to sit there like I had to sit there after it happened.
Licata says a friend recruited her to give the financier a massage at his Florida home when she was in high school. And hoping to earn some extra money for Christmas presents, she agreed. Now 31, Licata is calling for Epstein's alleged accomplices to be held accountable. She's not alone. On Wednesday, Epstein accuser Jennifer Arose filed a civil suit against Epstein's estate and his purported ex-girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Arose is also suing an alleged recruiter, a secretary and maid on Epstein's staff. Kimberly Lerner is one of Arose's attorneys.
Was there anyone else who should be held accountable?
There were various secretaries, there were housekeepers, and there was the recruiter. We haven't been able to identify any of those people by name as of yet.
The lawsuit claims Arose was recruited when she was 14. She alleges the abuse began about a month after meeting Epstein, when he showed her the massage room in his palatial New York City townhouse and told her, "It's my favorite room." According to the suit, their visits eventually became routine. A maid would put towels and lotions out, tell Arose to get changed in the bathroom, and leave her $300 in cash for each visit. About a year after the alleged abuse started, Arose claims Epstein forcibly raped her, and she never returned.
How much are you seeking from Epstein's estate?
I don't even know what his entire estate is worth, but we're seeking significant damages.
But Licata says going through the courts won't make up for the abuse she suffered.
A civil lawsuit then would not give me back what I lost.
Licata tells us, at least for her, there is no way to get peace now that Epstein is dead. And we should note that both Licata and Arose say they never actually met Ghislaine Maxwell. And the 3 women are listed as Jane Does in the lawsuit because their identities are not yet known. That's something attorneys say they hope to learn through the discovery phase of the civil case. And we should also note that Ghislaine Maxwell has never been charged with a crime and has denied any wrongdoing in the past. Vlad, Anne-Marie.
All right, Mola, thank you very much. For more on this, let's bring in CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman. So, Rikki, we'll talk about Ghislaine Maxwell and the other alleged accomplices in just a moment, but I want to get your take on this Washington Post story of Epstein's autopsy based on the facts highlighted by the report and not conspiracy theories, because there are a lot of them floating out there. What are your biggest takeaways from this Washington Post story?
Well, the Washington Post story is echoed by the New York Post story this morning. Both came out about the same time. And what they talk about are the results of the autopsy, even though the autopsy itself has not been made public in terms of its final conclusion. The conclusion is still pending. So what we find is that there are broken bones in the neck, and particularly, as Anne-Marie mentioned, the hyoid bone. And if you look at statistical analysis, which is broken down in the Washington Post story, about people who commit suicide versus people who have been strangled, that what you find is that the breaking of the hyoid bone has a much higher statistical probability of people who have been strangled. But it does not exclude some people who have committed suicide by hanging. And there are various factors involved in the suicide. One of them, not present here, is in essence, the bigger the drop, the more chance that the hyoid bone is or other bones are broken. This we know could not have been that big of a drop. But age plays a factor. And the older you are, the more likely it is statistically that the hyoid bone would break. 66, depending on one's perspective, certainly isn't old. To me, it isn't old. But in reality, it's not the suicide of a teenager or a young person. So one of the things that I did find interesting was that when they went and compared it to other cases that we hear about, like the Garner case in New York, about the chokehold, the so-called chokehold, and that finally has not been determined what's happening to that police officer, is that the question became for the medical examiner and for others about what bone, if any, was broken. And the hyoid bone was not broken in that case. So here, what this does, I think, unfortunately, Vlad, is it does fuel the conspiracy theories. I still have not left my position that he did it himself. I am told, I think by a reliable source, that if you wet the sheets, that it can also create more friction depending on the position of your neck that could also break the bone.
Why is his cause of death, if we have these details about the autopsy, why is the cause of death still pending?
Well, because the cause of death depends on many things in an investigation. I don't know that we have a toxicology report back. I also don't know that all of the people have been questioned who are on the cell block. One of the questions I have, of course, because if the conspiracy theories are going to be out there involving another human being, well, there is a camera on the hallway outside the cells. There is not a camera inside the cells. We don't know what happened inside the cells. But if someone came from somewhere else, be it a guard or another inmate, into the cell, one would hope the camera was working. One would hope we would know that.
Yeah, really. So listen, onto this idea of his alleged victims, his accusers. They have now the opportunity to file lawsuits civilly. And as I understand it, several have, at least one I know that we profiled. Then she was there at 12:01 as soon as this law was enacted here in New York.
And no one can blame her. I mean, I would say, boy, I would be the first person to the courthouse. If I knew I had a year's window, why would I wait another day?
Right. So, but now we have the person who's accused of abusing her is no longer alive.
Correct.
Right. We do not have a criminal conviction. So what is the likelihood of a successful civil suit?
Oh, I think there's a likelihood of a successful civil suit because, first of all, the proof is preponderance of the evidence. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And what I have often said in terms of illustration is when we talk about proof beyond a reasonable doubt, we are talking about on those scales of justice having a lead weight, bring you all the way down. It's not that you believe someone is guilty or suspect they're guilty. You must prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And those scales of justice, when you have preponderance of the evidence, it's 51%. It's a feather. So the proof is much less. And what you have here is you can have a victim of Jeffrey Epstein who can be supported by the employees who were around Jeffrey Epstein. You had housekeepers, you had people working in the house, you had doormen, you had, of course, then the other potential defendants in cases like this, the enablers, the people who may have recruited the young woman, brought her to the mansion, took her out of the mansion, taxi drivers, who knows? This is not simply one person's word against a dead person.
Fascinating. So let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. She's one of those alleged accomplices. We saw Meg Oliver in a piece for CBS this morning. She's here in the United States. I actually didn't know that.
Well, she was thought
she's
to be.
thought to be.
I mean, at this point, we still don't know where she is. In Meg Oliver's speech, which I had the honor of being in.
Yes, I saw that.
The natural Rikki, the one in the afternoon. That in Meg's very, very good piece, what we learned was that Ghislaine Maxwell had a boyfriend who lives in beautiful Manchester by the Sea in Massachusetts, and that boyfriend still has Ghislaine Maxwell's dog. But Ghislaine Maxwell is in parts unknown, at least to us. Perhaps the government does know where she is, but we don't. This is a woman who could be in France, could be in England, could be anywhere in Europe. This is someone who saw this coming for quite some time and certainly saw it once Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and had the ability to quickly get out of the country. And I mean, we know there are people, defendants like Roman Polanski, who have managed to get to countries where they have never been brought back to the United States of America. If Ghislaine Maxwell decided that she wanted to go only as far as Massachusetts, that was her choice. But I'll tell you this much. If there are both civil actions where process will have to be served on Ghislaine Maxwell, but far important, as the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York continues, particularly under the ruling imprimatur of the Attorney General, William Barr, who wants to go forward here with a criminal case, Ghislaine Maxwell is in the crosshairs because we know at least one victim, and maybe there are many more, who will say that she was a recruiter, a procurer, if not a participant in these acts of Jeffrey Epstein's. I should also say that she's entitled to the presumption of innocence. We have no thought anywhere that she has admitted any culpability.
And let me just ask you a question about that Florida deal, because part of that Florida deal was any alleged co-conspirators, or a number of them, I don't know if they were named or not named, would be protected, that they would not be prosecuted. And so is there a possibility that should she find herself facing charges, that her lawyers could bring that up?
Well, they would certainly raise it as a legal defense. There would be no doubt about that. By the way, according to the Miami Herald, there has been a motion filed in the court in the Southern District of Miami by a group of these victims who are asking that that provision of that appalling plea agreement back from 2007 and 8 that protects conspirators, accomplices, known and unknown, that should be declared null and void. In the meantime, by the way, the Southern District of New York felt it was null and void as far as they were concerned, that the Southern District of Miami could not bind New York. And if they couldn't bind New York as to Jeffrey Epstein, they certainly couldn't bind people known and unknown.
Rikki Klieman,
Yes.
always